They told a black woman to wait outside, in a building she built. What happened next changed everything. Stay until the end to see power, dignity, and justice in action. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment where you're watching from. Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport was already alive by the time the morning sun began streaming through the glass walls of Concourse F. Travelers moved like rivers around polished marble floors. Flight attendants in crisp uniforms wheeled carts past quiet businessmen, and the steady hum of announcements floated above it all. Amid this ordinary choreography, Ava Carter stepped into the terminal with a stillness that made people look twice. Her white suit caught the sunlight like a blade, sharp, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. Her heels clicked against the floor with a rhythm that spoke of certainty. Everything about her was composed. The way she carried her black leather bag, the way she adjusted her sunglasses before slipping them into place, the way her gaze swept the room without urgency. It was the confidence of someone used to owning the ground beneath her feet. Yet, here, no one seemed to know her name. Ava approached the private Carter Air Executive Lounge, her company's crown jewel, a space built for comfort and exclusivity, with handcrafted furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a signature scent that matched her brand. She had overseen every inch of its design. Every tile, every light fixture had been approved by her. And yet, as she crossed the threshold, she was met not with respect, but with resistance. "Ma'am, this area is for members only." The voice came from behind a polished white counter. The woman speaking wore a fitted navy blazer and a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her name tag read Charlotte Walker, Public Relations Director. She was standing like a gatekeeper, arms crossed just enough to signal authority she hadn't earned. Ava stopped mid-step, her expression calm, but her eyes sharp. "I am a member," she replied evenly. Charlotte didn't lower her hand, which now hovered between them like a stop sign. "Then please wait outside. We'll handle your issue when the executives arrive." The sentence was simple, but its weight was heavy. An unspoken declaration that Ava didn't belong here, that she was an outsider. Around them, conversations softened. The man at the espresso bar stopped mid-sip. A couple near the window pretended to scroll their phones, watching from the corners of their eyes. Ava didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice or demand to be recognized. Instead, she adjusted the strap of her bag and took a measured breath. "I'm flying on Carter 1, she said quietly. Charlotte's lips tightened. "That's a corporate account. Only executive staff or verified owners are allowed." Ava's phone buzzed once in her hand, a short, deliberate tone. The red light on its side blinked to life, but Charlotte misinterpreted the glance. "Security," Charlotte called, her voice sharp as glass. "Please verify this guest." Two guards detached themselves from the far wall and began walking toward Ava. One was older, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that had seen more than his fair share of incidents. Marcus Reed, his badge read. The other, younger and less certain, was Ethan Cole. They approached with the careful politeness of men who knew this could get complicated. "Ma'am," Marcus said gently, "may we see your boarding pass?" Ava reached into her clutch and handed it over. Before Marcus could take it, Charlotte snatched it from his hands. Her red nails flashed against the white paper as she examined it with exaggerated scrutiny. "This looks unusual," she said, tearing a small corner from the edge. It was not enough to make the pass invalid, but more than enough to humiliate. Gasps rippled through the lounge. Phones tilted upward. Ava remained still, her silence louder than any protest. She'd been here before, maybe not in this lounge, maybe not with these people, but this pattern was familiar. Doubt, dismissal, condescension. Charlotte leaned closer, her voice low but dripping with arrogance. You can't just walk into a lounge like you own it. Ava's gaze flicked briefly to the runway visible through the glass wall. Outside, a Carter Airjet waited, gleaming under the Georgia sun. Its logo, her father's name, shone bright against the silver fuselage. I'm aware, she replied softly. Please, wait outside while we confirm, Charlotte said again, gesturing toward the doors. Around them, the silence grew heavier. A man near the window muttered, "This is bold." Another shifted uncomfortably. Ava didn't move. The sunlight framed her like a spotlight, her posture calm but immovable. Do you always move this quickly when someone looks like me? She asked Marcus, her voice controlled. Marcus froze. Ethan shifted his weight. Charlotte's head snapped toward her. This isn't about race, she snapped. This is about protocol. That word again. Protocol. It rolled off Charlotte's tongue like a shield, a way to hide prejudice beneath procedure. Ava extended her hand toward the torn boarding pass. Give me that, she said, still calm, still measured. Charlotte's lips curved into a thin smile. Then, slowly, deliberately, she tore the ticket in half. The sound was sharp, rip, and the reaction was instant. Gasps, whispers, the shuffle of feet. One woman near the coffee machine whispered, "She didn't just do that." Another answered, "She did." Ava bent down slowly and picked up the torn halves from the marble floor. Her hands were steady as she aligned the edges, pressing them together as if stitching a wound. Then she looked up, her eyes meeting Charlotte's. Do you always talk to people like that? She asked. Only when they try to sneak in where they don't belong, Charlotte replied, crossing her arms again. You'll wait outside, and I'll forget you were ever here. Ava's voice was soft, but her words landed like thunder. You're right about one thing. Charlotte smirked. And what's that? You'll forget me for 2 minutes. Then you'll remember me for the rest of your career. Something in Ava's tone, its certainty, its gravity, made the young guard step back. Even Charlotte's smirk faltered for the first time. Ava placed the torn pass on the counter, perfectly aligned. Keep that, she said quietly. You'll need it for reference. Her phone buzzed again. 3 short beeps, a signal. No one noticed except her. Outside, the Carter Airjet shimmered beneath the sunlight. Her name was on its wing, her father's name. And still, inside this room, she was being told she didn't belong. The silence grew heavier, more suffocating. Charlotte cleared her throat, trying to reclaim authority. If you don't leave, I'll have the airport police remove you. You already called them, Ava said evenly. Charlotte blinked. How would you know that? Ava turned her wrist slightly, revealing the small red light glowing on her phone. Because you're being recorded in real time. The words sliced through the room like a blade. A ripple of realization moved through the crowd. Phones rose higher. Whispers turned into a low, electric buzz. The young guard's eyes widened, and even Marcus looked uneasy. Charlotte stepped forward, her voice trembling. Put that away. You can't record here. This is private property. Ava's gaze softened. This property isn't private, she said. It's corporate. She paused. And I am corporate. The words hung heavy in the air. No one fully understood them yet, but soon they would. And when they did, the balance of power in that room would never be the same again. For a long second, no one breathed. Then the airport's ambient hush returned. Coffee hissing, shoes crossing marble, a flight chime from somewhere beyond the glass. But inside the Carter Air Executive Lounge, The center of gravity had shifted an inch toward the woman in white who had just told the gatekeeper that corporate wasn't some distant committee. It was standing at the counter. Ava didn't lift her voice. She lifted her wrist. The small red LED along her phone's edge glowed steady like a pilot light. She tapped once. A low, musical tone answered. Clean, official, impossible to confuse with a private recording app. Activate Protocol Legacy 1. The phone replied in a neutral voice, the kind that never blinks. Protocol confirmed. Initiating internal systems handshake. Charlotte stiffened. What did you just do? A soft ripple of blue light crawled across the ceiling panels. It looked like dawn moving over water. Hidden cameras, designed to disappear into architecture, blinked awake in polite coordination. On the far wall, the lounge's artful screensaver vanished. The display went black, then white, then resolved into a stark header no one had ever seen in public. Carter Air Group Live Internal Compliance Review. Location, Lounge, 4A, Atlanta. Conversations died. Phones rose higher. A young guy in a denim jacket, Tyler Brooks, murmured, "Is this live?" The silver-haired woman near the window, Ruth Johnson, set her coffee down and stopped pretending not to watch. Charlotte tried to laugh and came up with nothing. You can't broadcast inside a private lounge. This lounge isn't private, Ava said without looking at her. It's corporate. She tapped again, precise as a key in a lock. Establishing device trust, sealing grid online, access points bonded, recording, audio, video, transactions. Marcus Reed, the older guard, followed the blue wake as it threaded through the fixtures overhead. He'd seen fire alarms, evacuation drills, even a bomb squad sweep. He'd never seen a building decide to pay attention. Ethan Cole, newer to the badge and to life, took an involuntary step back. Charlotte slapped her palm against the counter scanner like the panel might obey her authority by muscle memory. The reader flashed amber, then ignored her. "Security," she said, trying to recapture a tone that had already abandoned her. "Turn that off, now." Marcus didn't move. "Ma'am, it's not our network." "What do you mean it's not?" The main screen changed again, replacing the header with a set of boxes that felt more courtroom than customer lounge, timestamps, device IDs, entry logs, access roles, a mosaic of the invisible things buildings know about the people inside them. At the bottom, a neat bar pulsed through a checklist. Cameras, online audio, nodes, online badge, readers, online compliance layer. Armed. The hush deepened, the kind that happens when everyone decides at once that they're in the wrong chapter of a handbook. Charlotte's jaw set. "This is harassment," she said, voice shaken toward anger. "You can't weaponize tech against staff." Ava turned her head just enough that the light caught her profile. "Documentation isn't a weapon," she said. "It's a mirror." The phone vibrated again, crisp, efficient. A second voice, female, clipped, clearly not pre-recorded, came through the speaker like a colleague walking into frame. "Miss Carter, Legacy is live. Do you want full room broadcast to internal compliance?" Someone in the back whispered. She said, "Miss Carter." Ruth nodded once, eyes never leaving the screen. Ava didn't blink. "Yes, full broadcast." "Confirmed." A brief shimmer of static. Then the monitor settled into a clean interface with a watermark none of the onlookers had seen outside of onboard and slides. SAG/SLA internal. A thin banner ran along the bottom. Session. 4A Legacy ATL. Witnesses detected 23. Charlotte's composure slipped. "You have no right." "You have your policy manual," Ava said quietly. "It cites this right 4 times. Tyler swallowed. "She knows the page numbers," he whispered. The system spoke again, not unfriendly, not human. Begin an incident capture. Calibrate an witness grid. Extract and access roles from local cache. Badges pinged the ceiling. People instinctively looked up as if they could see their names being weighed by light. Marcus cleared his throat, respectful even in confusion. "Ma'am," he said to Ava, "can you explain what this is?" "You don't need my explanation," Charlotte cut in, regaining a sliver of bite. "She's not management. She's—" The word she was reaching for died on the way out. She'd run out of tone to hide behind. Ava didn't answer Marcus directly. She turned her phone screen outward, not to flaunt, but to acknowledge, long enough for anyone paying attention to recognize the interface had no consumer iconography, no social app logos, just a neat internal skin that made people stand up straighter without knowing why. "Personnel posture assessment loaded," the system announced. "Verbal event markers detected, potential conflict nodes, front counter, agents, Walker, Charlotte, Reed, Marcus, Cole, Ethan, unknown female passenger." "Unknown," Charlotte repeated, pouncing on the word. "See? Even your little toy doesn't know who you are." "It knows enough," Ruth said, not to Ava, not to Charlotte, just to the room. Ethan wet his lips. "Ma'am, if you could wait outside, we can avoid—" "Outside," Ava said softly, almost like she was testing the word for cracks. "The place built for people who don't get invited in." Charlotte folded her arms tighter. "Protocol is for everyone." Ava let the sentence hang in the air long enough for its irony to show itself. Then the screen obliged her. Policy reference, non-discrimination. 2, 1.1, policy reference, customer dignity. 3, 4.2, policy reference, ID handling 5. 2.9. Beneath each policy, a slim line highlighted in progress, like a professor's finger running under a sentence you can't pretend not to have read. The room seemed to lean toward the monitors. The lounge's soft music shut itself off, the sound system defaulting to silence like even it knew better. "Witness capture enabled," the voice continued. "Upload slots open." Tyler's screen flashed a prompt he didn't ask for. "Share video with internal compliance?" His thumb hovered. He looked at Ava. She hadn't asked for help. She hadn't asked for anything. He hit allow. On the large display, miniature frames appeared. Live angles from phones around the room. Not social media, not the internet. A private intranet full of truth, threaded and time-coded and instantly bigger than one person's word against another's. Charlotte stumbled back a half step. "You can't compel witnesses." "It asked," Ava said. They answered. Marcus exhaled through his nose. He'd spent 3 decades telling stories to supervisors who weren't in the room. He'd never seen the room tell the story for him. Ethan tried again, voice low and decent. "Ma'am, if we could just see some ID—" "You had it?" Ava said. She didn't look at Charlotte. She didn't need to. A short, awful silence. Then Charlotte snapped, "That paper wasn't valid." The system, impartial to pride, marked the moment with a soft chime. Event marker, document destruction, front counter. People flinched like they'd heard a gavel. Charlotte pressed her palms harder against the counter as if pressure could reverse a choice. "This is ridiculous. You think lights and screens make you important?" Ava's answer was almost kind. "No, Legacy does." The monitors shifted again. A translucent overlay slid across the footage, a lattice of data that made the marble, the counter, the faces into nodes on a map. A quiet stream of text reported actions in clean, courtroom-friendly verbs. Requested verification, denied entry, demanded removal, damaged document. Ruth nodded at the verbs like old hymns she recognized. She hummed under her breath. "Call it plain." Charlotte's voice turned hoarse. "Security, do something." Marcus's reply was steady, and for the first time, not deferential. "We are," he said. "We're not escalating a situation that's being documented." A small smile touched the corner of Ava's mouth and then went away. She wasn't here for victory poses. She was here for record. The phone at her wrist chimed again. 2 short tones with the rhythm of a meeting reminder. The same female voice from earlier came through, lighter this time, like she already knew the answer. "Miss Carter, Legacy can perform a live policy audit of local account activity. Proceed?" Tyler blinked. "Local account." Charlotte heard it too. Panic edged her words. "You will not audit my team in public." Ava didn't look at her. "Run the audit." "Confirmed. Scopin, front of house accounts, lounge 4A. Time window, last 90 days. The word audit appeared in the corner in a small, elegant font. Neighborly, almost polite. A progress ring crept around it. Ethan glanced at Marcus like a rookie looking for a North Star. Marcus didn't have one to offer. He was watching the ring too. Preliminary results, the system said, and all at once the ring became a list, simple, unfancy, devastating in its lack of drama. Anomaly: excessive manual denial flags on guest entries, user, Walker, Charlotte. Anomaly: document handling deviations, user, Walker, Charlotte. Note: prior coaching logged, no corrective follow-up. Status: escalation recommended. The room didn't cheer, it didn't need to. The truth didn't ask for applause. Charlotte went very still. "You can't put that on a screen. That's HR." "This is compliance," Ava said. "HR decides feelings. Compliance decides facts." Ruth looked at the torn halves of the pass on the counter like they were evidence, because they were. "Facts don't bruise easy," she said to no one in particular. Ava turned her head slightly, and for the first time since she'd walked in, there was the faintest tremor under her calm. Memory, not rage. "My father worked this airport for 30 years, she said. "Just that much, no more. He taught me doors can close quiet." Charlotte opened her mouth and found nothing waiting. On the screen, the progress ring completed. The header returned with one new line at the bottom, soft as a verdict being placed rather than thrown. Next, identify primary authority for final actions. Ethan swallowed. "Primary authority," he repeated under his breath. Tyler's recording caught the way the room leaned into that phrase, how it pulled everyone's attention forward like a gravity well. Charlotte found her voice in time to point it in the wrong direction. "Who even has that?" she demanded, as if the ceiling would give her a different answer than the one already in the code. The system did not rush. It never had to. A thin status bar crept from left to right along the bottom edge of the screen, taking a small eternity to cross 6 inches. The lounge held its breath with it. Ava lowered her wrist. She didn't need to watch the bar finish to know what came next. The moment had already pivoted. The building had already chosen to listen. "Outside is where you wanted me," she said softly, eyes on the glass and the silver jet beyond. "But inside is where records live." The status bar reached the far edge and clicked into completion. The screen flared white, then cleared to a final prompt waiting to be filled, its cursor blinking like a heartbeat. Primary authority. The cursor pulsed once, twice. The chapter ended there, not with shouting, not with sirens, but with a blinking promise that the room was about to learn the name on the wing meant more than paint. The blinking cursor on the monitor seemed to stretch time itself. No one moved. No one spoke. The air inside Lounge 4A had changed from simple tension to something heavier, expectation. Charlotte's confidence, once loud and sharp, now trembled beneath a silence that felt like judgment. Every breath carried the weight of 1,000 questions, all of them circling the same unspoken thought. Who is she? And then the system answered. Primary authority, Ava Carter, CEO and majority shareholder, Carter Air Group. The words appeared in bold, white letters across the screen, clean and final. The room collectively inhaled. The younger guard, Ethan Cole, blinked twice as if trying to make sense of the letters. Marcus Reed, the older guard, lowered his gaze in quiet recognition. And Charlotte. Charlotte staggered back a step, gripping the counter like the floor itself had shifted beneath her feet. What does that mean? She asked, her voice cracking for the first time. It means, Marcus said quietly, she owns this place. The whisper rippled through the lounge. Phones stopped pretending to be hidden. Now they were fully raised, recording every second of what was unfolding. The people who had once looked at Ava like she was trespassing now stared at her with awe, guilt, and something else, fear. Ava didn't gloat. She didn't smirk or throw Charlotte's arrogance back at her. She simply stood there, calm and composed, as though this moment wasn't a victory but a necessity. Charlotte's lips trembled. You're the CEO? Ava's reply was soft, almost gentle. I am. The weight of those two words flattened the room. It wasn't just a revelation, it was a reversal. Every insult, every slight, every arrogant glance now lay exposed under the harsh light of truth. Charlotte had told the owner of Carter Air to wait outside. She had ripped the boarding pass of the woman who had built the company from the ground up. Marcus removed his cap. Miss Carter, he said, his tone now respectful, formal. I apologize. If I had known— You shouldn't have needed to know, Ava interrupted, not unkindly. Respect isn't something you give because of a title. It's something you give because it's right. Her words cut deeper than any insult could. The young guard swallowed hard, his shame visible. Even some of the passengers looked down, realizing their silence had made them complicit. Charlotte stumbled for words. Why didn't you say who you were? Ava took a slow breath, her gaze drifting toward the massive glass wall where a Carter Airjet gleamed under the Georgia sun. Because I shouldn't have to, she said. Because people deserve dignity even when you don't know their name. The system, impartial and relentless, continued its work. Compliance review initiated, the screen read. One by one, entries began to appear under Charlotte Walker's name. Incident reports, ignored complaints, previous warnings. Every unchecked action, every subtle bias, every moment of misconduct was now part of the public record. Charlotte's face drained of color. This isn't fair, she whispered. Neither was tearing up my boarding pass, Ava replied. The screen scrolled again, revealing a section labeled Employee Behavior Analysis. Under Charlotte's profile were flagged terms: discriminatory language, inappropriate conduct, verbal hostility. Next to each was a timestamp. The most recent one, 9:42 a.m., was still being recorded in real time. This can't happen, Charlotte said desperately, turning to Marcus and Ethan. You can't let this happen. Marcus shook his head. Ma'am, this is above us now. The system's voice, smooth and neutral, spoke again. Incident escalation, review pending executive action, witness submissions, 14, media attachments, 6. Tyler Brooks, the man in the denim jacket, lowered his phone just long enough to mutter, It's all here. Everything she said, every second. Ruth Johnson crossed her arms, watching Charlotte unravel. About time someone held her accountable, she murmured. Ava stepped closer to the counter, her heels echoing softly against the marble. The sound wasn't threatening, it was deliberate, like punctuation. "Do you know why I built this company, Charlotte?" Charlotte didn't respond. She was staring at the screen where her career was being dismantled line by line. "My father spent 30 years working here," Ava said. 30 years as a mechanic on the tarmac. He worked harder than anyone I've ever known, but he was never once invited into a place like this." She paused, her eyes glistening, not with anger, but with memory. "When I was a little girl, he told me something I never forgot. Baby, if they don't open the door for you, build one with your name on it." The room was silent. No one shifted. No one even breathed too loudly. It wasn't just a story. It was a legacy being spoken into the walls themselves. "So I did," Ava continued. "I built Carter Air for people like him, for people like me, for anyone who's ever been told they don't belong." She looked directly at Charlotte. "And I will never allow it to become a place that makes people feel small." Charlotte's voice was barely audible. I didn't know." "You didn't ask," Ava replied simply. The monitors above them shifted again, this time displaying an image from the past, a black and white photograph of Henry Carter, Ava's father, standing beside a jet engine, grease on his hands, pride in his smile. Underneath the photo, a quote faded into view. "We build doors, we don't wait for them." Tears welled in Ruth's eyes. Even Marcus looked moved. "Your father sounds like a hell of a man," he said quietly. "He was," Ava said, "and everything I've done, this company, this lounge, that jet out there, is because of him." Charlotte's knees looked weak, her hands trembling as she gripped the counter. "Please," she whispered, "I didn't mean to disrespect you." Ava tilted her head slightly. "Intent doesn't erase impact." The system chimed again, each word like a hammer sealing a verdict. Identity verified. Ava Carter, CEO, founder, majority shareholder, compliance status, active review, employee Walker, Charlotte. The crowd was no longer silent out of shock. It was silent out of reverence. The people in the lounge weren't just witnessing a corporate audit. They were witnessing justice. Calm, deliberate, undeniable. Charlotte tried to speak again, but her voice was gone. Her authority had vanished the moment the system revealed the truth. The woman who had once ordered Ava to wait outside was now standing in a building that didn't just belong to Ava. It existed because of her. Ava looked down at the torn boarding pass still lying on the counter. She picked up the two halves gently, like something worth remembering. "Some wounds," she said softly, "are worth keeping as reminders." Then she turned back to the window. Outside, the Carter Air jet shimmered beneath the Atlanta sun, her father's name emblazoned on its wing. And in that reflection, steel and sky and memory, Ava Carter no longer looked like a woman fighting for a place. She looked like a woman who had already built one. And now she was going to make sure no one ever tried to close that door again. The room was silent, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of reckoning. Every person inside Lounge 4A understood that the balance of power had shifted completely. The woman they had dismissed, insulted, and humiliated now stood revealed as the highest authority in the building. And Ava Carter wasn't raising her voice or seeking revenge. She was simply letting the truth speak for itself, and the truth was louder than any shout could ever be. Charlotte Walker stood frozen near the counter, her knuckles white against the polished surface. Her mind raced desperately for a way out, but every exit was closing faster than she could reach it. The screen above them, relentless and impartial, displayed lines of cold corporate language. Employee Charlotte Walker, violations detected, discriminatory treatment of client, documented verbal incident. Tampering with passenger documentation, boarding past destruction, misconduct during customer service interaction. Status, suspended pending executive review. Charlotte's voice came out in a whisper. This can't be happening. You can't do this to me. Ava's gaze didn't waver. I didn't do this to you, Charlotte. You did it to yourself. The words landed heavier than any accusation. They were not spoken in anger, not drenched in vengeance. They were stated as fact, as undeniable as the evidence now displayed on every screen in the lounge. Ethan Cole, the younger guard, shifted nervously, unable to meet Ava's eyes. "Ma'am," he said carefully, I'm truly sorry for how we treated you. We should have known better." Ava turned her head toward him, her expression calm but firm. "Knowing better starts now," she said. "What matters is how you act from this point forward." Marcus Reed, the veteran guard, removed his cap and held it in front of him like a man standing in a courtroom. "Miss Carter," he said respectfully, "I've been doing this job for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like this." "Maybe," Ava replied softly. "That's because too many people look the other way for too long." Charlotte snapped her head toward Marcus. "You're just going to stand there? You're supposed to protect me?" Marcus met her eyes, his voice steady. "I protect the truth, and right now it's not on your side." The tension in the room tightened like a coiled spring. Charlotte's panic was starting to slip into anger. "You think you're untouchable just because you're the CEO?" she spat. "You think you can just ruin someone's life because they made a mistake?" Ava took a slow step forward. Her heels clicked against the marble with deliberate rhythm, not aggressive, but unstoppable. "I'm not ruining anything," she said. "I'm holding you accountable. There's a difference." Charlotte laughed bitterly, the sound hollow and desperate. "Accountable? For what? For following protocol." "Protocol?" Ava repeated. "You tore up a passenger's boarding pass. You made assumptions based on appearance. You spoke down to someone because you thought they were beneath you." Her voice sharpened slightly, like steel cutting through silk. "That's not protocol, that's prejudice." The words hit Charlotte like a slap. She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. The room was no longer on her side. The crowd, once silent and complicit, now stood firmly behind Ava. Phones continued to record. Eyes followed her every move. Every second of this was being documented, shared, remembered. The system's voice broke the silence. Compliance process, Phase 2, initiated. The monitor displayed a timeline of Charlotte's employment. Past incidents, ignored complaints, and previous warnings that had never resulted in meaningful consequences. One by one, they scrolled across the screen like a list of unpaid debts finally coming due. Charlotte's face turned pale. Please, Miss Carter," she whispered. "I'll change. I'll do better. Just don't end my career over this." Ava stopped in front of her. They were face to face now, and yet it was clear they were standing on entirely different ground. "I don't end careers," Ava said softly. "People end their own careers by refusing to learn when they're given the chance." The older woman near the window, Ruth Johnson, spoke for the first time since the reveal. Her voice was calm but edged with truth. "That's the gospel right there." A ripple of agreement moved through the lounge. For the first time, the energy wasn't fear, it was understanding. People were realizing this wasn't about punishment, it was about change. The system chimed again. Employee Charlotte Walker, Access privileges suspended, security badge deactivated, awaiting executive decision. Charlotte gasped as her ID badge's light turned from green to gray. A faint click sounded from the door behind the counter, the sound of her privileges being revoked. She wasn't in control anymore. She wasn't even part of the system she once lorded over. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I never meant to hurt anyone," she whispered. "Intent doesn't erase impact," Ava said, "and impact is what matters most." The young man in the denim jacket, Tyler Brooks, lowered his phone and stepped forward slightly. "Miss Carter," he said quietly, "the video's already spreading. People are watching. People are listening." Ava nodded once. "Good. Make sure they understand this isn't revenge. It's a reminder. A reminder that silence isn't weakness and that accountability isn't cruelty." Charlotte wiped at her tears, still refusing to accept the reality around her. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" Ava shook her head slowly. "No, there's nothing enjoyable about watching someone's worst moment play out, but there is something necessary about it." The monitors shifted once more, now displaying Carter Air's official policies, anti-discrimination guidelines, customer rights, corporate ethics statements, each one underscoring the severity of Charlotte's actions. The irony was brutal. The very rules she was supposed to uphold were now the ones condemning her. The system's voice returned, softer this time. "Final notice. Employee subject to termination pending executive decision." Charlotte closed her eyes as if that might erase the words. "Please," she whispered, "I've worked here for years. Don't take everything from me." Ava's voice softened too, but it didn't lose its edge. "I'm not taking anything from you. You took this from yourself the moment you decided someone didn't belong." The words hung heavy in the air. There was no malice in them, no hatred, only truth. And the truth, once spoken, could not be unsaid. The crowd stood in quiet respect now. Some lowered their phones, not because they were done recording, but because they no longer needed proof. The lesson was already burned into memory. Ava turned toward the large window. The Carter Air jet was still waiting, sunlight glinting off its polished surface. For a brief moment, she saw her reflection in the glass, strong, unshaken, resolute. The girl who once had to wait outside was now the woman holding the keys. "Justice," she said softly, almost to herself. "It doesn't shout. It documents. It teaches." Then she turned back to Charlotte, who was trembling, defeated, and silent. "This isn't the end for you," Ava said. "But if you want a future, it starts with understanding what you did here today." Charlotte didn't respond. She couldn't. The truth had spoken for her. And as the compliance system continued its work, one thing became clear. This was no longer about humiliation. It was about transformation. And transformation, Ava Carter believed, was the truest form of accountability. The air inside Lounge 4A had transformed completely. What once felt like a space of exclusion now held the heavy quiet of consequence. Everyone present understood that they were witnessing a moment far bigger than a corporate incident. It was a reckoning, a correction, a rewriting of what power looked like. And at the center of it all stood Ava Carter, steady and composed, the embodiment of what happens when dignity refuses to bow. The compliance system's voice returned, firm and emotionless. "Final review complete. Administrative decision pending." Charlotte Walker stood motionless, her body rigid and trembling as the weight of the situation pressed down on her. She looked nothing like the woman who had once barked orders across the counter, nothing like the arrogant director who had told Ava to wait outside. The sharp edges of superiority had dissolved into tears streaking down her cheeks, into a voice that cracked every time she tried to speak. "Please," she whispered again, almost inaudible. "I'm begging you. Don't do this. I've given my life to this company." Ava's gaze didn't waver. "And yet, you forgot who you were representing," she said softly. "This company doesn't exist to keep people out. It exists to bring people in." Charlotte tried to respond, but the words dissolved into a choked sob. Her authority, once so absolute, was gone. What remained was accountability, and it stared back at her from every glowing screen. The AI system spoke once more. Employee Charlotte Walker. Access privileges terminated. Position revoked, effective immediately. A hush fell over the room. Then a small sharp sound, click, echoed from behind the counter as Charlotte's badge deactivated. The door she had always passed through without question now refused to open, and just like that, the empire she had built on arrogance collapsed beneath her feet. Charlotte gasped as if the air had been sucked from her lungs. "No, no, please. This isn't right." Ava's voice remained calm. "Neither was tearing up my boarding pass. Neither was assuming I didn't belong here. Neither was humiliating someone because of how they looked." She stepped closer, her tone not cruel but deliberate. "Actions have consequences. That's not revenge, Charlotte. That's justice." The two security guards approached slowly. Marcus Reed, the veteran, looked at Ava. "Miss Carter," he said respectfully, "what would you like us to do?" "Escort her to exit B," Ava replied, "and make sure she leaves safely." Charlotte stumbled as the guards guided her away from the counter. Her once confident stride was gone, replaced by shaking legs and a broken whisper. "I never meant to hurt anyone." "Intent," Ava said gently, "doesn't erase impact." The crowd didn't look away as Charlotte was escorted out. They didn't avert their eyes or pretend it wasn't happening. They watched, because accountability deserved witnesses. And as the glass doors closed softly behind her, a collective exhale swept the room. Justice had been served. The imbalance had been corrected. The silver-haired woman by the window, Ruth Johnson, stood and clapped once, then again. Soon the sound spread. Soft, deliberate applause that wasn't about humiliation, but about change, about history shifting in real time. Ruth smiled warmly at Ava. "Child, your daddy's proud right now," she said. Ava's breath trembled just slightly. "Maybe," she replied quietly. "Maybe he's watching the doors stay open." The compliance system chimed again. All violations cleared, system stable, compliance session archived under legacy. Ava turned back to the counter, the same counter where moments earlier she had been dismissed and belittled. Now it felt different. The room itself felt different. The humiliation she had endured here would become a lesson carved into the company's DNA. The young man in the denim jacket, Tyler Brooks, stepped forward with his phone in hand. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "the video is already everywhere. People are sharing it, talking about it. You made a lot of people feel seen today." "Good," Ava said softly. "Now promise me something." "Anything," Tyler said without hesitation. "When it's your turn," she said, "make someone else feel seen too." He nodded, his eyes bright with purpose. "I will." The younger guard, Ethan, approached next. His voice was humble, sincere. "Ma'am, I'm truly sorry. I know an apology isn't enough, but we'll be better. I'll be better." Ava nodded. "That's all I ask. Change starts today." She reached for the torn boarding pass still resting on the counter, a symbol of everything that had happened. The two halves fit together perfectly in her hands like a wound learning how to heal. She slipped the pieces into her bag. "Some reminders," she murmured, "are worth keeping." Then she turned toward the massive windows. Outside, the Carter Air jet stood ready on the runway, its silver wings catching the Georgia sunlight. Across the side, her father's name gleamed in bold, proud letters. Carter. Ava walked toward the exit, and the crowd parted silently, not out of fear, but out of respect. As she reached the doorway, she turned back one last time, her gaze sweeping across the room that had once tried to push her out. "Power," she said, "isn't proven by who you keep out. It's proven by who you let in." The words sank deep into the hearts of everyone present. They would remember them long after this day was over. As Ava stepped out onto the tarmac, a soft breeze brushed against her face. The flag above the terminal swayed gently. The engines of her jet hummed, steady and sure. Each step she took up the boarding stairs was a memory of where she had come from, of the doors that had once been slammed in her face, of the people who told her she didn't belong. At the top of the stairs, she turned back one final time. "They told me to wait outside," she whispered. "But sometimes, outside is where revolutions begin." The door of the jet closed behind her. The engines roared softly to life. Through the glass of Lounge 4A, the crowd continued to watch, their faces illuminated by something new. Hope. The plane began to roll down the runway, the name Ava Carter shining in the sunlight. It wasn't just a brand, it wasn't just a company. It was a legacy, one built not on exclusion, but on inclusion. Not on arrogance, but on justice. And as the aircraft lifted into the sky, it carried more than passengers. It carried a message that no door should ever remain locked forever. Power isn't about who you keep out, it's about who you let in. If this story moved you, hit subscribe, drop a comment with your thoughts, and share this video to remind the world that justice always finds its way.